and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who would like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you.
Hello, I'm Tom Dillon, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Helen Leathers. Hi, Helen. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm just smiling because we say this every time, but I think it's nice to say hello to one another.
Absolutely. Just check in, make sure you really are fantastic.
Yeah. So, Helen, I'm really looking forward to exploring another coaching approach with you today. So tell me which approach we are looking at.
Well, Tom, in today's episode, we're going to be discussing positive psychology.
Hurrah!
I know, we both love this. It's a brilliant topic. And we're going to be looking specifically at positive psychology coaching, which has come about as a result of positive psychology movement.
Okay, well, let's start with positive psychology itself. And What is positive psychology?
Okay, back in 1998, way back, last century, a researcher named Martin Seligman proposed the idea that there should be a new subfield of psychology with a focus on what's life-giving rather than life-depleting. So he'd grown really frustrated with the focus of psychological study being the pathology of mental illness, trauma, suffering, which, to be fair, he'd been part of that, but he wanted to balance out the world of psychology and focus on what it means to be well, to be happy, and to lead a fulfilling life.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Martin Seligman and his frustration that he felt in 1998 was that one of the stats that he produced was that 2/3 of psychology was based on that pathology, looking at what was wrong with people. Mm-hmm. But that suggests that 1/3 of psychology was actually looking at what was right with people. So It wasn't a new movement, it was just a change in emphasis. So rather than the overall being focused on pathology, the shift so that more research was done around positive psychology. But it had been going on for some time. So the whole humanistic movement, Abraham Maslow was talking about positive psychology in the 50s and 60s, but talked about humanistic psychology, which wasn't quite as catchy, I don't think. So I think there was just something about the time and place, Martin Seligman, and coining the phrase positive psychology. I think it was just heard in a different way. And obviously, in the last 25 years, it's become a huge endeavour.
Yes.
And thousands of research papers have been conducted in the name of positive psychology. So it has taken on a life of its own.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And some of the theory even goes back to Greek philosophy. So,
yeah.
It's not new.
No, but as I say, there was something about time and place. It just hit the sweet spot and off we go. We've had 25 years of positive psychology.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important here to mention that positive psychology is not just about positive thinking or that toxic positivity, putting a face on despite things that are happening in your life. It's not even about being happy the whole time.
No, and I think that is a message that people quite often will take from, it's all about trying to make us cheer up. But it's not. It's about, when we talk about happiness in positive psychology, we're talking about subjective well-being. That's really what it is. And that's whether overall is your life okay. Are you relatively happy with your life? So you're going to have good days and bad days, but if you look at it overall, are you above the line or below? So back to defining positive psychology.
Yes, positive psychology is a branch of psychology and is about the study of what enables people to flourish. And it's underpinned, as you just mentioned, by a really large body of research studies. In fact, Seligman's first paper on positive psychology was in 2000 with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. They wrote the paper together. I've been trying to say that name.
You did very well.
For years. I'm always really jealous.
Cracked it.
I've
well
cracked
done.
it. Yeah. And since that original paper, thousands of researchers globally have conducted literally tens of thousands of studies on positive phenomena, and they've established this ever-growing base of evidence which is able to be applied of positive psychology principles and interventions, and it's applied in all sorts of areas of life. And here's what I love and how I see that positive psychology is aligned to coaching so beautifully. Seligman talks about traditional psychology being focused on those who are living at 0 to -5, so kind of not okay. Whilst positive psychology is about people who are at naught or above and seeking to help them to move further along that scale to good, to great, to flourishing. And in this respect, I think it's really interwoven in intention, at least with coaching. It's working with well people who want to improve their lives further. It just makes sense that if you're a coach, getting to know positive psychology is a positive move. Because it looks at studying human thoughts, feelings and behaviours. It looks at strengths rather than weaknesses. And we know there's a whole strength coaching movement. Building the good in life rather than focusing on what's going bad and repairing that. Positive events, positive influences, positive emotions, positive states, optimism, meaningful purpose, engagement, and like you say, life satisfaction, well-being as well, and self-esteem and confidence. Does any of that sound familiar?
It sounds very much like the sort of topics that we would explore in the coaching room.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the amount of empirical research that underpins positive psychology theory means that we as coaches are able to use what they term positive psychology interventions, which have a fantastic grounding in science. And we know they have a good chance of working if we use them with our clients.
Yes, and I think it's perfectly possible for someone to use those PPIs, positive psychology interventions, in the coaching room without really having a full understanding of positive psychology. But I think if we want to think of ourselves as positive psychology coaches, then we need to have a better understanding of the theory and a deeper understanding of the theory.
Yeah, some are very simple, but I agree with you.
Yeah, so if we think about Martin Seligman's work, I think having an understanding, reading some of his books on positive psychology would be useful. Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory, I think it's useful to have an understanding of that. You mentioned Mihail Csikszentmihalyi. I'm so disappointed that you've learned how to say that. I always feel really good because I can do it. So Csikszentmihalyi's work around flow, I think having an understanding of the theory behind that is important, rather than just trotting out an exercise that someone can do and go, oh, well, it works. We know it works because there's some research behind it. I think there's more to positive psychology around the theoretical side that as coaches it would be good to explore.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I noticed that wasn't included in that list of what might be discussed in positive psychology coaching is goals and the pursuit of goals. And I'm wondering if we were taking a positive psychology approach to coaching and considered myself to be a positive psychology coach, and I kind of do think that I do take that. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a positive psychology coach. I'm more of a person-centred and Gestalt coach, but I do use positive psychology and I'm interested in the person in front of me and their well-being. So if they had a goal that I thought was going against their well-being, I'm just wondering what coaches might do in that situation from an ethical, looking after their coachee, how they might approach that.
That's a really good question and a really interesting dilemma. That certainly brings something up. And I'm not sure what the answer is there. Because I would perhaps, we would always ask what might get in the way, what might the consequences of this be.
And I think it's the consequences, isn't it? It's exploring what it means for them and the people around them. Because it's not just about their well-being. It's, if they're doing something that's going to cause harm to others, then we might want to question that. And I think something around ecology, the ecological effect of what's going on. How does this impact you, your environment, the people around you? And I think that's a really interesting element to explore. So thinking about our intention in the coaching, if someone comes with a goal, rather than just saying, okay, how are you going to get your goal? What options do you have? How are you going to do it? I think we have to explore why this goal? And if we're noticing that it sounds like it might have a detrimental effect on them, I think to raise that is ethical. And I think it would bring new thinking to the coachee.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if we've got a long-term relationship with that client, and I do a lot of work around well-being and maintaining energy levels and inner resources with my clients, if you've been working with someone for a while, you're going to have those previous sessions to refer to. In the past, you've spoken about how you need to maintain your energy, your well-being, etc. How might this goal impact on that? I think whilst we do have to come from a place of non-judgment, there's almost a requirement of us to challenge that, I think.
Yeah, and if we think of some of the doctors that we've worked with, one springs to mind who had let go of a paid role because she was overwhelmed, and then almost immediately agreed to take on a well-being role that was unpaid. And you have to question, how is that going to impact on your overall well-being if you're just filling your time with other work, unpaid work in this case. But there has to be a point at which you stop to consider your well-being.
Yes.
And take that step back. Otherwise, you're heading for burnout and all the consequences of that. So I think it's just interesting that it's not part of the positive psychology approach to coaching, but certainly in our experience of coaching, people do come with some goals that aren't necessarily in alignment with their well-being.
Yes, absolutely. Although accomplishments and achievements does come up in one of the models that we're going to talk about in a further episode, in the PERMA model.
Yeah, and I think that's fine, isn't it? I'm not saying that goals are a bad thing to have in relation to positive psychology, because we all want to be moving towards something, to feeling like we're making progress, moving towards achieving something. But it's whether we do that in an ecological way.
Yes, absolutely.
So as we started to discover in this conversation, and we've gone off a little bit of a tangent, but it's a huge topic, so we could talk all day about this. But what are some of the elements relating to that come from positive psychology that we can use with our clients in the coaching room?
Great question, and it is a huge topic, so we definitely won't be able to cover everything, but we can look at 3 aspects to start with. So the first is experiencing positive emotions. This is something that's integral to positive psychology, and we've talked about emotions in the coaching room back in episode 19. And this is linked to work done by Barbara Fredrickson, a leading researcher into emotions. And she's shown that positive emotional experiences contribute to and have a lasting effect on our growth and development. So she's explored how this can be done through her broaden and build theory of positive emotions, and it's a big part of positive psychology coaching. And that's about bringing in and experiencing more positive affect, as it's termed, which is just another way of saying emotions, really. And the more positive emotional experiences we have, the better, effectively. They help us to be more open-minded, to be creative, to be curious, to be playful. They help also to undo lingering effects of negative emotions, so that if we start to realise we're feeling something negative, we can consciously engage with a more positive experience. Even, it's been shown, even mild contentment can help to undo feelings of stress in the body. So that's nice.
So if we engage with positive emotions, that might go some way to mitigate those negative emotions.
Yes. And also she talks about experiencing more positive emotions, building resilience. And I know that's something that comes up in your book on resilience, Tom.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking in terms of positive emotions. Obviously, it's something that's useful to incorporate into the coaching room, but how would we go about doing that?
Good question. I think that it's firstly important to understand that there's a whole array of positive emotions. As I mentioned, mild contentment could be one of those emotions, as could absolute joy and ecstasy and anywhere in between. And some of the broaden and build interventions that have been shown to build our positive emotional experience that we could introduce to clients are things like keeping a mood diary that can help track activities that make you feel good. You might start to notice patterns to your feelings and start to be able to notice when your moods drop, and therefore engage in the activities that help you to elevate your mood. So that's one thing. Cultivating self-compassion. Gratitude practices. Gratitude practices are something that many people do. We see it all over social media, don't we? About, gratitude and being grateful and thankful counting your blessings. But actually, it's something that's really underpinned by a lot of positive psychology research. And one of the most powerful evidence-backed interventions is called 3 Good Things. So I thought I'd just share that today, because it's been found that doing this exercise increases happiness and decreases depressive symptoms for up to 6 months.
So you mentioned the name of the exercise. What does 3 Good Things actually involve?
This involves, at the end of the day, sitting down with pencil and paper and writing 3 good things that have happened during the day. But not just 3 good things, not just a list of things that you're grateful for. 3 good things that have happened during the day and what your involvement was with them. And it's that kind of, I had a great conversation with this person and I felt that it was really nice to interact and give that person time, because I know they live on their own and they don't speak to many people. So a bit more depth to it about your involvement with that in that situation. And it's been shown that doing this just for 7 days has that impact that I mentioned before for up to 6 months. Now, it could last longer, but they didn't do a follow-up study, which I think is a shame. But certainly, if you're someone like me that struggles with doing something every single day, because I'm not very good at maintaining that, like I've started numerous diaries, I never continue with them. You only need to do this exercise for 7 days for the effects to be lasting. So I think that's a really positive thought to have. Just do it for a week and see what happens. See how much better you feel about your life.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great thing to try out. And it's probably not going to be for everyone. Like you say, some people will struggle to maintain it every day, but I certainly think it's worth giving it a go. There's a lady called Mel Robbins who has a high five exercise that she does in the morning, where she high fives herself in the mirror just to go, you've got this. Just a bit of affirmation for herself. And I'd heard her being interviewed and people said, it's a bit... people are going to think it's a bit weird. And what do you say to the skeptics that say, it wouldn't work for me? She said, well, don't do it. How's that working out for you? So I think with any of these things, it's worth giving it a try and seeing what works for you.
Yes. And I know that one thing I've done with my clients for a long time before I knew about positive psychology was to work on a list of mini adventures that they could have that would expand their curiosity, expand their positive experiences. And so get them to make a list of little things that they'd like to try and perhaps some big things that they'd like to try, and then spend some time each week or each month on their own doing those things and just trying one thing at a time. So it could be something small. So I know of one lady who never really wore makeup and she was like, I feel a bit dowdy. I never know what to do with makeup. So on her list was go and have a makeover at a department store. It could
Great
be.
idea. Yeah. I might give it a go.
Well, okay, fine. Each to their own. But it could be something small like that. It could be something big. Like we had the experience over the summer of going and doing the world's fastest zip wire, which was certainly an experience.
It was an experience. It was interesting. I'm not sure what emotion that produced.
There were many, yes.
Good. Okay, so we've covered off positive emotions. We could talk all day about positive emotions, but let's move on and let's talk about another aspect of positive psychology. What's next, Helen?
Okay, the next one I want to talk about is engaging with strengths, and this is a huge part of positive psychology and a huge part of coaching, and that is about helping our clients. Because you know what humans are like. We all do this. We focus on the things that we're not good at, don't we?
We do, yeah.
So if we start to look at the things that we are good at and the things that we have strength in, that can really improve our sense of autonomy, sense of efficacy, sense of well-being. So this is about identifying the things that we're good at and how we could use them more. But also there's some evidence about how we could use them differently, and exploring how we can take something we know we're good at and use it in a slightly different way can really help with all sorts of positive experiences. Also using our weaknesses less, or doing less of the things that we don't really enjoy, that drain our energy when we do them.
Yeah, and I'm a big big advocate of finding out what it is that you are good at and what you enjoy, and just finding that opportunity to do more of that, and actually to get rid of the things that you don't enjoy. Because there will be someone else who actually really enjoys those things and is good at them, and just
happy to
does
do
them.
them.
It's like editing podcasts. We don't do that.
No, we don't do that.
We're not good at it. We don't particularly want to do it. We know someone that's really good at it, who does
Pete.
it particularly well. So why not get Pete to do that bit?
And I had a client that was really stressed because of doing the VAT return. And she said, I always have to ask my husband where things are because I don't know what he's done with this, that and the other. And I asked, how could you find someone else to do this? Because she was really stressed by it. And she said, well, I don't really know why my husband doesn't do it. This is the sort of thing he loves. And so in the end, she had a conversation with her husband and they agreed that he would do the VAT return and she would carry on doing the things she was good at, which was the people, the HR in the business instead. So I think that strengths, again, a huge topic. And what we're going to do is put some resources on the show notes where people can go and do a little online test. Because I think people love an online test.
They do. And the VIA character strengths is something that Martin Seligman introduced with, struggling to remember the guy's name, Peterson. So they produced this VIA character strengths, which is we're going to cover it in a future podcast, but it's an interesting, it's character strengths. So they're not necessarily things that you would instantly think, oh, well, I'm really strong at that. But it's well worth doing. There's 24 strengths and you rank them. So that's worth doing. I've actually created my own set of strengths cards that you can work with coachees. Strengths on one side, values on the other. But it's a great way of having that interactive playfulness in the coaching room.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to that set of cards on the show notes as well.
Lovely.
The final element that I want to mention is flow. And this is the psychological concept of flow rather than, going with the flow, which is different, definitely.
It definitely is different.
So flow, from a psychology perspective, is said to be one of life's highly enjoyable states of being. It's those moments when you're entirely present in the moment. It encourages creativity, it encourages productivity. It actually also encourages emotional regulation. And it's associated with increased intrinsic motivation, happiness and contentment. The main researcher on this topic
is our friend
with the hardest to pronounce name in psychology, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah, I always call him Mikhail for a long time, but then I did realise that actually that's not how you say it. So I'd got his surname cracked, but then it's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
I used to call him
Mickey. Which sounds
Mickey.
More sort of, because he's Hungarian-American. I used to say he was Russian as well, till someone on one of my courses was from Hungary. She said, no, he's ours.
We're going to own him.
So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Yes. Yeah. During the 60s, he and a colleague were studying artists and looking at their creativities, and he noticed how completely absorbed they were in the process. And if you've ever been creative or known someone that's creative, their single-mindedness, their persistence to keep going for many hours without a break, oftentimes, forgetting to eat. So he was looking at this, and he took his research then into other fields and found that there are lots of people doing lots of activities that get into this state of flow, of just being really present with the activities they're doing. And he discovered that people find a genuine satisfaction with this flow state. There's a few things that he said are important in order for flow to occur. And that is that you have to be challenged by what's happening. So you have to be stretching your skills. If something's too easy, you're going to give up. If something's too hard, you're going to get bored and give up as well. There also has to be some feedback. So if you think about a sculpture being created, as soon as someone chips away at something, they're going to know whether it was the right chip or the wrong chip. So there's immediate feedback. Same with painting or anything else. So it's this idea that you become one with your actions as well. You don't realise there are distractions. You are very not self-conscious. Is that the right phrase? Unself-conscious? You're really not conscious of yourself at all.
I was silent because I was trying to think of what that phrase would be. But yeah. Not thinking about yourself.
You're not thinking about
Yeah.
yourself. You're not conscious of other people's
Yeah.
thoughts or judgments, perhaps. And also, and this is really key, is there's that sense of time being distorted, of time absolutely flying by. And again, like unaware of your need to eat or drink and such like. So introducing this concept to our clients and helping our clients find activities that give them a sense of flow, even if it's try something out and see if it happens, then try something else. Find the things that give you that flow state and do more of those.
Yeah, I think one of the difficult things in trying things out is that it's very difficult to be in flow when you're incompetent. So if you were learning to play the violin, you might be trying really hard, but unless you can actually make a sound and get lost in it, it's very difficult to be in flow. So I think there is something about not necessarily mastery, but being at a certain proficiency that allows you to get into that state. So I play tennis. I'm not a great tennis player, but I can play tennis. And I will, during a rally in a tennis match, I will go into that flow state. I'm not thinking about what my body is doing. I'm thinking about getting to the ball, and something happens. I'm competent enough that I will be in the right position, my swing will be right, and I'll hit the ball down the line 1 in 10 times. But I'm in flow whilst I'm doing it. When I'm serving, I'm not particularly good at serving. I'm not in flow when I'm serving. I'm too busy thinking, okay, if I miss this shot, then... So I think there are elements that if you want to try something out, it's getting past the point at which you're
An absolute beginner.
and just getting to the point of some competency, I think.
Yeah. And I know for me, yoga is a great flow activity. And actually, Chisholm Mihai talks about yoga being one of those things that's very closely linked with flow states.
Yeah. I think it's always interesting when we run workshops around flow and I ask people what puts them in a state of flow. And some people will say running or cycling. And I think it's possible that you might just be not thinking of anything and focus on your running. I think probably if you're running cross country, you've got to watch where you put your feet. So you've really got to focus on your running. If I go for a run, my head's all over the place. I'm not thinking about my running. I could be worrying about clients. I could be thinking about what I'm going to do next. It's not a flow state for me.
Yeah.
Whereas playing tennis, I can't possibly think of anything else whilst I'm playing tennis. So I think that, to me, makes the distinction between what puts you in flow and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of occupations, software engineers, I think spend a lot of their time in flow.
Yes.
You know, if they're just working on programming, writing code, then I think they could easily sit down at 9 o'clock, look up 10 minutes later and the whole day's gone. It's 5 o'clock really, because that time has disappeared.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good. So that's flow. So we've got those 3 different elements of positive psychology that we've touched on.
And something that people might want to explore more to work with their clients. And if we return to Martin Seligman, he talks about there being 3 different types of life that we can lead. When we experience more joyful moments, more of those positive emotional experiences, he would describe that as us living the pleasant life. When we engage with more flow-giving activities, he would describe that as us living the good life. And then when we have meaningful purpose, that is a meaningful life. And those 3 lives also form part of positive psychology and are going to be something that we're going to explore on a future podcast, because we could be here all day.
We could. So let's not be here all day. Let's wrap that up. Thank you, Helen. That's been a fascinating exploration of positive psychology and looking at those 3 different elements. So I think we've made a good start. I think we could explore different elements of this in later episodes. So let's do that.
Well, on episode 27, a couple of episodes' time, we're going to be looking at the PERMA model.
Perfect.
As part of a tool in coaching.
So back
that's
to
good.
Martin Seligman. Marty to his friends, apparently.
Is he?
Like, because Mihai sent Mihai is Mickey to his friends.
Yeah, or me.
I think we
when
need
I
to...
can't pronounce it.
So yeah, back to Marty Seligman and the PERMA model in 2 episodes' time.
And meanwhile, next time we're going to be interviewing another coaching doctor, Dr. Sharina Fernandez, who is a former student on the Transformational Coaching Diploma and as well as being a GP, is now a health coach and lifestyle medic. So we look forward to speaking to her
And a
next
very
time.
lovely lady. People
Of
will enjoy
course.
listening to Sharina. She has a lot of good things to say.
Excellent.
So thank you, Helen. I've really enjoyed that today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.